Ancient Sanskrit epics describe a colossal airborne chariot sweeping silently across the sky, thousands of years before the first airplane. This craft supposedly belonged to King Ravana, the legendary 10-headed ruler of Lanka. We have to ask, do these accounts hold fragments of lost technological reality, or are they purely acts of extraordinary mythic imagination? To separate the fact from the fiction, we need to trace the origins of this story through the ancient manuscripts, the physical geography of Sri Lanka, and the modern movements determined to prove the legend true. But before we can understand the claims about how he ruled the skies, we have to look at the physical earth where his empire allegedly stood. Long before recorded history, the island of Lanka was a dense, untamed stronghold defined by steep rock faces and thick tropical canopies. In the Ramayana epic, Ravana is cast as a demonic villain who abducts a foreign princess. Yet, Sri Lankan folklore remembers him entirely differently, as a benevolent emperor, an accomplished physician, and a brilliant engineer. Locals point to this massive rock plateau as the remnants of his ancient citadel. Constructing a capital here required immense logistical and architectural skill. Legends speak of a solid gold palace complex carved directly into these sheer cliff faces, accessible only by a primitive elevator system. Even today, the surrounding topography is steeped in his name, with landmarks like these cascading waterfalls firmly linked to his royal court. These physical remnants point to an advanced ancient society capable of massive engineering feats. Yet, moving stone is one thing. Claims regarding his mastery of aviation are something else entirely. This palm leaf manuscript contains the Sanskrit verses of the Ramayana, detailing the craft known as the Pushpaka Vimana. The text describes a flying machine that could expand or contract based on passenger numbers and navigate the air by responding to the thoughts of its pilot. Mainstream historians read these verses as purely spiritual allegory, while alternative theorists look at the exact same lines and argue they are literal descriptions of a lost mechanical technology. The primary obstacle for those theorists is the timeline. The myth places Ravana's reign around 5000 BC, leaving a gap of thousands of years before the first verified archaeological records of complex civilization on the island. Still, the stories continue to captivate researchers, largely because the events described in the poetry map flawlessly onto the actual physical geography of the region. In the epic narrative, this treacherous, storm-filled stretch of the Indian Ocean forms a seemingly impassable barrier for invading armies. But separating the two land masses is a real geological formation of limestone shoals stretching across the water. The existence of this physical bridge gave weight to the ancient accounts. If the terrain matched the poetry so closely, the idea of a massive bridging campaign, or a king crossing the sky in a flying chariot, began to feel plausible. This vintage map of Ceylon illustrates how early cartographers documented the island's coastal outlines and internal topography, permanently linking real-world coordinates to the legendary locations of the Ramayana. By grounding a mythological narrative in highly accurate geographical landmarks, the texts blurred the line between spiritual faith and factual history for centuries. Today, that blurred line is fueling a major sociological shift in Sri Lanka. It is a movement of history from below, driven by citizens seeking to reclaim Ravana's status from a foreign villain to an indigenous national hero. Much of this is driven by amateur researchers online. These digital bricoleurs crowdsource textual interpretations and local folklore, creating a massive, interconnected network of alternative historical narratives. This digital momentum easily crosses into the physical economy, directly supporting a lucrative tourism industry built around the Ramayana Trail. Pilgrims and tourists follow this trail deep into the highlands, arriving at ancient sites like the Hakgala Botanical Reserves. Here, under the shadow of the peaks, the distinction between historical investigation and active religious worship dissolves completely. The belief in Ravana's advanced kingdom has become so culturally embedded that the Sri Lankan government itself recently announced official initiatives to investigate the ancient aviation technology described in the texts. For millions of people, establishing their cultural sovereignty and reclaiming their deep past carries far more weight than securing strict scientific consensus. We are left with a collision between two very different ways of viewing the world, the rigid physical demands of modern archaeology against a nation's deeply held cultural truth. On a human level, the Pushpaka Vimana reflects our most timeless, universal desire to break earthly boundaries and conquer the sky. Must we view this ancient craft entirely as a myth, or does the story hold the faint echoes of a lost reality? Ultimately, the power of Ravana's machine does not depend on whether it ever actually took flight. Its true legacy is that the idea has survived, passing through human memory for over 5,000 years.